Streaming live from Oklahoma's own digital studio, this is a sports update.
Hey, thank you very much for tuning in this afternoon, coming to you live from the News on 6 digital desk. My name is Jeremie Poplin, and we'll forego the original sports update for a little bit of something different here from the digital platform today, and that is a conversation with a man that's got a lot going on and has made a major announcement here within the last month or so, and it impacts so much of our local community. And of course, I'm speaking of the president of the University of Tulsa, Brad Carson, who announced that he is stepping down as the University of Tulsa president and going on to a new venture. So there have been a ton of questions that have popped up here recently about how much of an impact that this will have on the athletics side for the University of Tulsa. And we've all seen the great strides that has been made within the athletic department and the university itself over the last 4 years under the leadership from President Carson. So without further ado, let's welcome in our guest here this afternoon. He is none other than Brad Carson, who's joining us here live on cam. President Carson, thank you so much for joining me here this afternoon. And this is a conversation that I think will pique a lot of people's interest. But I've got to ask first, in your new venture that you have coming up, it's AI related, but where did your love for AI first really start to take form and shape this new position that you're moving into now?
Maybe my love-hate relationship with AI. That's all of us should have that. So it actually started back when I was at the Department of Defense, where the military was very interested in AI and how it might change the nature of warfare. And so I got involved with it there as I was running a lot of the big parts of the Department of Defense. And then it just has carried on from there. So I've been very involved with really the last decade. And now it's a chance to go do it full time at what I think is a pretty critical moment in world history for this.
I want to dive into more of that before we let you go, but first thing for me is a little bit of an appreciation for you because I'm a Tulsa native. I know you're a Tulsa native as well. And the one thing that I have noticed, and maybe this was by design, is I think the university should be visual and have a visual element to it throughout the entire city. That means whether I'm driving in on the Broken Arrow Expressway, someone's coming in from I-75, all the various inflow points into the city, there needs to be branding from the university. There is that downtown. I know that you're excited about some new properties that are downtown as well. But was that part of your key mission in becoming president, is just having that visual element to remind people that there is a world-class institution in the University of Tulsa that exists right here in the city?
Absolutely, to remind people of that and also to show what a university can be, which is a university should be driving the culture, a lot of the entertainment, the arts of a city, right? And that's what we've tried to do. It's not just the sports, which you see obviously, right? If you come to game day, we've really transformed the game day experience for fans. We know it's about artists and poets and novelists and filmmakers and people like that who are all coming to Tulsa to enliven the kind of tapestry of life here. And so I'm very proud of what we've done in that regard.
From an athletic standpoint, how steep was the learning curve for you moving into this position and having all of this, maybe one of the more tumultuous times in the history of college athletics, kind of thrown on your desk on top of every other responsibility that you have as a president?
It's actually one of the big jobs of any Division I president, for sure. I was a big fan. I loved sports, but I did not know a lot about the business of sports. And so it has been a big learning curve to try to understand, how athletics is running, how these changes, like the House settlement is coming down, are going to affect us. And so I've learned a lot. Luckily, I've had Rick Dixon there to help shepherd me through a lot of these questions. And now Justin Moore is terrific in following up on that.
Was there anything that surprised you about the way that collegiate athletics operate in today's current climate?
I think really the cost of it. I'd never really paid close attention to the cost of athletics. I knew it was expensive, of course, but I didn't really understand, the facilities are very costly. You're giving scholarships to lots of people. You have your coaches' salaries and the effort to keep them. So I think for me, and this is obviously a struggle for TU that will continue, is like, how do you pay for Division I athletics? It's not easy, even at the biggest of schools. But at a school like TU, the smallest to play Division I football and basketball, it's going to be a challenge.
Is that the biggest hurdle, in your opinion, in looking forward to whatever the future holds, not just for TU, but for athletic departments across the country?
Yeah, I think so. I think the cost. Right now we're paying players. And so the HR department at TU will be cutting checks to players as early as this fall. And so I think, when you look at the cost of this, I mean, TU runs each year about $200 million budget. Well, if you're Alabama or Oklahoma State even, you want to pay your football team about 20 million a year. That'd be like a tenth of your budget. And so that kind of money is going to be a struggle for even a school like Oklahoma State to achieve that kind of goal. For a school like TU, that's a fraction of that size, it's going to be even bigger.
What's the alignment like with the university? I get this question asked a lot, and I'm sure that you do as well. What's the alignment like between your office, Justin, who we'll spend some time talking about in a bit as well, the athletic director, Justin Moore, and the board? I think that's probably one of the more asked questions that even I get as somewhat of an outside figure from the athletic department.
I think it's very strong. We've had debates in the past. Again, when the finances come up of the university, people ask, would it be cheaper to be D3, D2? And the answer to that, I always tell people, it's no. The only thing more expensive than a Division I program is a terrible Division I program. And I said, that's why we have to be better. So Justin and I were fully aligned, and we had great board support on that too. So I think for fans who care about Golden Hurricane sports, they're very lucky that we have a lot of alignment.
Can you go a little bit further in that into having a bad athletic department and the amount of money that you have to sink into that to even competing at the D3 level? We see this on social media a lot. We see this, that questions that pop up from time to time, which is, hey, in order for this university to be competitive, why don't you just go D2, D3? And it doesn't quite work like that, does it?
It doesn't. It's a terrible idea, in fact, even though superficially people say, well, can't we save a lot of money if we do that kind of thing? I always point them to the example of the University of Hartford. Hartford, a few years ago, decided to drop out of D1 and go D3, I think. And it did a couple of things. It tore apart the university because the fan base, the alumni were at each other's throats. So it caused a civil war. Litigation ensued over this, which stymied the effort for years. And when you lose Division I football, especially, but Division I men's basketball too, right? Those are the two sports that actually make money for schools, right? We have big TV revenue. So the costly sports to us, if you will, are all the ones you never see on television. The rowing, the track, very vital, and we love those sports, but they're not huge revenue generators. So to drop out to D1 is to actually lose the golden cow that's, help giving you money for this whole thing. And so that's why you want to be in Division I and why you see a couple of schools now trying to be Division I. But it's also why, given the changing landscape in college football especially, you have to be good in Division I. We've not been good, sadly, the last 2 or 3 years. And if we're not better in 5-7 years, when there's a big reshuffle again, right, we could lose out and be forced into some kind of lower tier. So that's why we have to be good and why that alignment's so important.
Part of that is why the investment now is so important for the future. Is that correct? Because it feels like that there is another dynamic shift that's going to happen at some point in time. No one knows in terms of timing. Most people point to, the 2032 range might be the next opportunity, maybe even before that, but it's such an evolving landscape that the next bomb could drop from an athletic standpoint here in the next couple of months. I mean, look at OU Texas and how secretive that was before it finally leaked out. But to me, it's always about making the investment and setting yourself up for down the road to make sure that you're a part of what group that you feel like that you belong to.
That's right. My phrase I often tell people, including the board of trustees, is wake, not Drake. And by that, I mean this. In 2031, 2032, as you mentioned, the SEC and the Big Ten TV contracts are going to come up for renewal. I think it's entirely possible then you see a further consolidation into maybe a top 30, maybe top 50, right? Where you have the Alabamas and the Oklahomas go a certain direction. And that leaves behind, even in those great conferences, right? They could easily drop Wake Forest, Vanderbilt, Northwestern, schools that are great academically, but are not strong football performers. And so for me is I want TU to be playing against Wake Forest, Northwestern, Tulane, Rice in 10 years and make that cut. That's the second tier, if you will. I don't want us to be playing Drake, a great school, but they're not a sports powerhouse. And so for us, if we don't invest now, where, hey, they're looking at now the top 70 teams in the country, are we going to make that cut? Because that's where Northwestern and Wake Forest will be. I want to be in that cup. So investing now is critical, where we're good enough over the next 5-6 years that people pick us up. And we don't get marginalized against our will to playing, kind of a renewed Missouri Valley Conference kind of schedule.
I want to play something for you here, and this is something that you had said at the introduction of Trey Lamb, because there are a couple of things in here that I want to highlight.
And before I turn it over to our terrific athletic director, I just wanted to say something to the alumni, to the many fans, to students, faculty, and staff of the University of Tulsa about how important football is to us. Right, as we go forward in the next 5-6 years, there's going to be a lot of turmoil in college athletics. We believe that college football is the signature program of any athletic department. And we also believe that we here at Tulsa can make a significant statement about what a small school that believes powerfully in academics can do on the field. I believe we have a great coach who will succeed in the community, in the classroom, as well as on the field. And we're very excited about what Coach Lamb's going to bring to us today. Part of our revitalization of athletics, our recommitment, if you will, to athletics, is having a great athletic director who builds on the foundation that Rick Dixon and others set, who's going to take us with sophistication and vision into a future that is going to be wild and woolly, one I think he'll navigate for us well. So,
can you explain about the recommitment and what actually has been done, Brad, from the board through your office and through Justin, in the recommitment to athletics at the University of Tulsa?
When I came on board in 2021, it was still an open question whether we were going to be competing in Division I. There'd actually been a lot of faculty pushback in the late 2018, 2019 range when the university had some financial troubles. There were many people on the board who thought that might be a plausible thing for us to do, just to drop down play Division II or Division III. And so it was really an open question. And I used to field from the faculty many times inquiries about, hey, it's very expensive to be in athletics. We're spending, $50 million a year all in. Why do we do this? Can't we devote that money to academic purposes in some way? And what we've done is try to do two things. We've actually put money into the program. We've hired Justin Moore from A&M. He brought a whole team of people from Texas A&M. And, they play sports at the very highest of levels. They get it and what's happening in the broader market. So very sophisticated people. He's hired amazing coaches, Trey Lamb being an example of it, who I think is going to be extraordinary. But they also understand what it takes to recruit players. I mean, you're already seeing every day when I open up my Twitter feed, there's a new basketball player, a new football player. People we've never gotten before. Syracuse, Ole Miss, guys who are big time who are coming here, and they know how to do that. But more importantly than that, I think we've persuaded the Board of Trustees, the broader community, that winning in sports is actually good for the whole university. Right? It's the front door to the school. People hear about Tulsa through sports more than they do any academic program. You may not like that, but that's just a fact. And being really good at sports can open up the university to a whole world. And I give the example of a school like TCU that did that. They very much committed to sports 25 years ago. They became excellent football, basketball, baseball, others. Right? And now TCU is a very impressive school, very popular school. And they led with sports. And so I said, it's about realizing that sports is an integrated offering of your university. And you can use great sports to really ramp up the school in some way. It's not a detriment. It's not a drag on you. It can be an accelerant if you know what you're doing. And that, I think, is what we persuaded people it can be.
Doesn't that fit into somewhat of the fabric of the culture that you talked about that the university should represent? And I know, look, I'm biased because I love sports. I've spent my entire life, covering or being involved in sports. So I look at it through a different lens than probably what the majority of people do. But to me, it is still a very important part of that fabric and culture that you want to help create and be able to expound upon.
True. When you think of what the TU community is, the community, right? It's often about sports. They come back for games, of all kinds. And so sports is a way to create a thread between generations of people and to let people know, we're around. They see us on TV. And when you're on TV, you see the PSA that talks about what a beautiful campus it is, and how brilliant students are coming here. And so that's what sports can be. And so I definitely reject the idea that sports are a drag to academics. At a university, said the great universities are investing in sports. Think of a competitor to us, Tulane, right? Great academic school, putting a lot of effort into good sports with success. And that's a role model for us too.
I'm going to play this and tell me how big of a role that this guy has had, Justin Moore, since he's been hired? And what was it like when you first sat down with him, and when did you realize that this is probably the guy that needs to lead us into the future?
We interviewed a lot of great candidates for the athletic director, and filling Rick's shoes was no easy thing to do. But I remember when we took Justin to the Polo Grill, my wife and I, to have lunch with him to talk about his vision. And what he brought to us that was so important, he's an athlete himself, right? He was a pitcher at Texas A&M, so he knows athletic culture, being an athlete himself. So he loves sports and relates to the athlete. He knew football very well because although he was a baseball player, he kind of grew up around Kevin Summerlin and the University of Houston football program. At A&M, got his start in football operations. And you know what? He got his very earliest start after graduating from A&M, working for Deloitte. And so he really understood business. And that's what athletics is today, right? It is a big business, a gigantic business. It's no longer just kind of like good old boys or, hope we all go along to get along. It's like having a business plan or, and executing against it. And he is the best at that. I mean, one of the great hires we've made it to you among many is Justin, because he understands, that how you run a business. And, it's going to be fun for me to watch his career. I hope it makes a long-standing life at TU. But this is the guy who's going to be like the Alabama AD someday, or the A&M AD. He is just top-notch, smart, good with people, good with athletes. We are so lucky to have him at TU.
When you made your announcement, and I saw it on the X platform, I retweeted that I felt like that this was I didn't necessarily call it a blow, but I felt like that this is a pretty important time for University of Tulsa athletics. With your resignation and going through this process of interim, and what we could be in a process of 1 to 2 years before they have another president that's there, I would assume, based off of your glowing review of Justin, that you feel like that the athletic department is in the best hands possible, even since that you've announced that you're stepping down as president.
I think absolutely. He's just the right person. The board has unbelievable faith in Justin, right? His vision for what we're wanting to do. He does require resources that the board will have to continue to give him. But I believe the board is committed to that. And so I think we're in good hands. And I think the university, finding a new president's not an easy thing. It's also just tumultuous in the whole higher education sector these days. But Justin's going to be amazing there. And I think left his own devices, you'll see incredible results on the field.
Trey Lamb had a quote the other day, and he was asked about if anything surprised him since he's been the head coach at Tulsa. And his quote was, "I'm surprised by the amount of people that he runs into in the community that have a connection to the university, whether they went there or they had a family member that went there." He referred to them as the Tulsa Mafia. I heard a recent interview with you as well, where you kind of basically said the same thing, that when you got into that position, you were surprised about the number of connections from a small university with the size of the University of Tulsa. How remarkable is that there is this community, this thriving support that the university has, not just for athletics, but for the entire academic side?
No, absolutely. One of my favorite facts about TU is we don't have a single building on campus named for somebody who attended the university, right? All of the buildings are named for people who just love TU, love the university, love what it can be, sometimes sports, sometimes academics, but not a single building of the probably 50 buildings we have the name of someone who actually attended the school. And that just says what the university has been to this community for a century, and will hopefully be that for another century. It's people believe in the school, even if they didn't attend it, because they know what a university can be. To be a big time city, you have to have a big time university. There's not a single city in the world that doesn't have a university that's part of it. And if Tulsa aspires to that, as it should, Tulsa U is going to be that school. It's not going to be OSU Tulsa, their heart's always in Stillwater. Norman will always be the center for OU, even though we have branch campuses, right? It's going to be the University of Tulsa. And that's why people embrace us always. And it's been amazing to watch.
I think we have a tendency to always hyper-focus on football, and clearly it's the most important sport on campus, but I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, the basketball side of things as well, and Coach Conkle, and knowing the importance of trying to get that to a certain point where they're winning consistently as well. Basketball plays a role in what's happening at the university as well.
Yes, hugely so. Both Eric Conkle and Angie Nelp are extraordinary leaders for us. I think the thing for us is this: you can be John Wooden, and if you don't have the resources from the university in this era, you're going to fail, right? You can be a great coach, but if you don't have the players, you just can't make it. And you don't get the players without the adequate resources. And I'm not talking just compensation, which going forward is going to be a big part of it, NIL. I'm talking about training tables, right, where they get the right nutrition, the weight rooms, the trainers, these kinds of things. And Eric Conkle is to me a figure a lot like John Wooden. He actually, I know, admires John Wooden. I often say to people, Eric Conkle could be the CEO of like a Fortune 500 company, the way he carries himself. And not a lot of coaches have that same demeanor, but he's like someone like a John Wooden. And I said, I think he's actually an amazing coach. One of our first hires when I came with Rick Dixon. I'm so pleased by it. And I think we're finally getting him some resources. When you see the people who are coming in to play, the kid from Rhode Island yesterday, for example, right? And you see what the kind of the recruiting rankings groups, are saying about us. That, they're like, we're going to be one of the best teams in the conference. I think his coaching is excellent. We've given him the horses. I think they're going to run fast, and I think he's going to be good. So I think for all these guys, Angie's the same way. In today's era, you can be Nick Saban, and if you don't have the players, right, you're not going to make it. And TU sometimes doesn't give our athletic department the resources it needs. So I'm proud that we've done a lot of that. I feel confident going forward. We realize the value of athletics, and we'll remain doing that.
Three more before I let you go. NIL, have to ask about NIL. Just your general thoughts on where we're at now. The university has made an effort as well to step up on that front. It's in many instances required to be competitive now on the athletic playing surface, almost virtually in every sport. But I don't know if I've asked you specifically in the past about what your thoughts are on the current state of NIL across college athletics.
It's a disaster across college athletics, for sure, right? The whole system is broken down, and these quarterbacks are playing 6 years in their fourth team. And I mean, you just look at PJ Haggerty, right? He played basketball for us. He's going to be on to his fourth school here. And if you care about getting a degree, you cannot get a degree, right, transferring every single year to a new place. And I said, it makes no sense to me. That being said, I accept the world as it is, and you have to play that game. And it's not so much NIL anymore, right? A lot of that's being brought in-house to be called compensation under the House settlement. And so, we're asking our NIL donors historically, like, just now give to the university, right? Who can help us, do a compensation plan for the players. So, it's essential. It's the way the world's going to work going forward. And if you choose not to play that game, you'll lose out. And you can be like Dabo Swinney or Clemson, who doesn't want to play the transfer portal. They pay the price for it, right? I mean, and we all no one loves it, but it's like gravity. You're just like, this is the way the world works, and you'll fall if you jump off the bridge. So it just is part of the world, and we have to live with it.
What are you going to miss the most about this? The university is so special because to me, it's all about the people, and you have to have the skill set at the University of Tulsa. You have to be a people person, because once you're able to unlock that, I think it becomes a truly special place.
It is the people I'll miss the most, the students. I was pleased that my first year I gave out my cell phone to every student, and I've kept in touch with them all, and they all have it today. So I hear from them all the time. I get to know them all. The community is a small community still, so you get to know most of the players. So really it's the people I will miss the most, right? You do extraordinary things. People who work for the university, they're not well paid sometimes, and they just believe in the mission. And so I will miss that a lot, the students and the people who support the students.
Final one, you're moving into this new position. Just be honest with me. How scary is the future when it involves AI? And it's honestly, it's hard to keep up. I see things that are incredibly positive. I see things that scare the you-know-what out of me at times, Brad, and I'm sure that you're the same way, but the future seems like a giant wild card right now in terms of AI. And I even feel like the AI is such a broad term now, because most people's definition of AI is creating baby memes on social media now, and Chat GPT. You're in much deeper than that, but seems like it's a very interesting time in our culture right now.
I think you've captured it exactly right. There's a lot of good that can be done from AI, right? In terms of, you see every day medical breakthroughs, things that are in science and mathematics that were previously unattainable. And AI has realize success in them. That's incredible for us. On the other hand, right, you see a lot of negative things from like images on the internet, pornographic images and things that are generated by AI. We see a lot of slop. Someday this conversation could be had by our avatars that are AI generated, right? And they may read all of our historical comments, and they can have a conversation by just saying, this is what Brad and Jeremie might be saying. And that is problematic as well. So that's why I want to get into it. I love policy first in life. I was a politician, of course. And the idea of like, this is a critical 3 to 5 year window where these technologies are really going to take root. And if we don't have like reasonable rules about them, guardrails, transparency about them, right, it can be for the negative, not for the good. So you're very right to be like, it's a love-hate kind of thing, is how you should treat this technology. And let's try to make it through the right kind of rules, to work to our benefit rather than our detriment.
It's funny you say that, because there was I believe an Australian radio station that had a very popular midday host that became popular for the last 2 years, and no one knew that it was actually AI that was running that entire show and playing music. They just made that announcement, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and it disappointed a lot of people. So yeah, you're exactly right. It could be an AI avatar version of us having this conversation sometime here in the near future.
Indeed.
Brad, thank you so much.
It's a great time to go into it. It's always TU's a great school, so I'll miss it. And thanks for covering it so well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And best of luck in your future endeavors.
Thanks so much, Jeremie. Take care.
Thank you. That is Brad Carson, president at the University of Tulsa, joining us here on the Digital Desk. Thank you for tuning in and checking out this latest episode. We'll be back next week on Thursday with another new edition. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button here if you're watching on YouTube.